Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our Friday panel on fallout from Skate Canada's refusal to hold events in our province. But first, the need for dollars.
The municipalities are struggling to keep up with infrastructure. So this is an opportunity for us to not only support, grow, repair infrastructure, but also create opportunities for more tourism.
The new mayor of Airdrie on taking a resolution to the Alberta Municipalities Fall Convention calling for an accommodation tax that towns and cities could apply to guests staying in hotels and Airbnbs. And Heather Spearman joins us now. Mayor Spearman, good to meet you and congratulations.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for all you folks do to keep Alberta up to speed on all the exciting things going on in our province.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, so let's maybe start on pitching the accommodation tax. 3% added to hotel and short-term rental stays. Your first real foray into the provincial stage as the new mayor. How hard did you have to sell it to other municipal leaders?
Oh, not very hard. We passed that resolution with roughly 74-75% at the resolutions table, which is a pretty good number. So I think everybody in Alberta who's experiencing this unprecedented growth is looking for ways to support their own residential tax base and their commercial tax base in their own communities. So when we have folks coming to our communities, it's nice to be able to look at potential solutions that can help support the infrastructure that we need that often supports their visits.
Well, now what does the need for those added dollars ultimately speak to?
You know, it's a variety of things. I mean, Airdrie specifically, we are such a young community. A lot of the events that we host here happen to be youth sporting events. So when we're talking about a municipal accommodations tax, when we have folks coming from all over the province or from Western Canada or maybe from the Northern United States, they're coming here for those sort of events. Not so long ago, there was the Ring of Fire ringette tournament for girls and young women that was hosted here in Airdrie, and our hotels were beyond full, and hotels in their surrounding communities were also full. So it's a very small addition to the bill for those that are staying here, but ultimately adds up to quite a bit. So for Airdrie, I mean, we could see as much as $800,000 a year in additional revenue, which is not nothing when you are one of the fastest growing cities in Western Canada.
Well, and like many municipalities, your council dove right in, went right to work on the 2026 budget, ended up approving, I understand, a 4.6% tax increase. How challenging was it to land at that figure, and what does it say about the year ahead for your city?
You know, I'll say this because I think there's a misconception from a lot of folks that, when we're talking percentages in terms of tax adjustments, it's different for every community. 4.6% in Airdrie is very different from 4.6% in Grand Prairie or Medicine Hat or Calgary. So we really try to boil it down to what does it look like on an annual or a monthly increase for folks. And so it was interesting because we have a mostly new council. Obviously, I'm the first new mayor in 15 years in Airdrie, so I had some responsibilities at the table. And one of those major responsibilities was to work with my fellow incumbents and with my administrative colleagues to bring the new council members up to speed, because they were essentially sworn in at the end of October and had a couple weeks to learn everything. And then they had to dive right into a $500 million budget, which is our biggest budget in the history of Airdrie, certainly. But it was curious because when the budget went public, it was presented as a 6.6% tax adjustment, but it wasn't accounting for about 2% of other increases that we could potentially add, whether that was library supports, housing supports, or some other things such as policing and whatnot. So we actually were looking more truthfully at an 8 to 9% tax adjustment for our residents and businesses. So yeah, we had some aggressive work to do. We were very fortunate. We have an excellent finance team here at the City of Airdrie, and they worked very hard to make sure that any extra money we had over the year was invested very, very prudently. So we had some really great investments come back to us this year that even though the financial year is not quite finished, we had already seen well over $5 million in a surplus because of those investments. So we used that to offset some one-time costs, which allowed for a few less trade-offs in terms of some of the things that we wanted to shave down in the budget, and that allowed us to get to that 4.6% number. So we're quite proud of that, and I'm happy to say that we unanimously voted that forward.
On that finances front, recent report from Alberta Living Wage Network put Airdrie right up near the top of the pile in a grouping of notable municipalities in the province, up just over 19% to $29 an hour, second only to Jasper. Why so high? And how do you approach that as mayor and council?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. So a couple things about the living wage that it's really important for folks in Alberta to understand. So this is a volunteer program. Not every single municipality participates in this data review, but Airdrie does. And the main reason being because we need and we prefer to work from a data set that's as fresh and as accurate as possible. So whether we are doing our annual census or whether we're doing the living wage assessment, it's really important to us that anytime we're advocating to third parties, such as other levels of government, we have those accurate numbers. So the interesting thing about the living wage calculations is that it's a very specific formula that takes into account multiple things, one of which is a particular interesting spot for Airdrie. Because we're such a young and very family-focused community, we have something called purpose-built rentals, right? And we see those in every single community. But in Airdrie in particular, we have a particular issue with the availability of 3-bedroom purpose-built units. And because of that, it actually affected the formula quite heavily. So it makes it seem like it's more difficult to get a 3-bedroom unit. And the cost for a 3-bedroom unit at the rental rates is significantly higher than you'll see in some other communities. But it doesn't necessarily mean that Airdrie as a whole is unaffordable or requires a significantly higher living wage to live in, especially if you are a single person or you're a couple or just don't necessarily need something from the rental market. Another consideration there, because it's obviously all around the cost of living, is a lot of folks in Airdrie commute. And because of that commute, there's insurance, there's fuel, there's all those transportation costs. So transportation is actually calculated in that formula as well. So when we look at the city of Airdrie specifically, are we truly requiring that kind of living wage based on comparables to other municipalities? Well, like I said, number one, not all the municipalities in the province actually participate. I suspect that if all of them had to, we'd probably land somewhere in the middle. And the second thing being, if we're not factoring in those 3-bedroom rentals, we would also probably land somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Maybe as a close, and we could maybe bring it back to the election. Many Albertans might recognize your last name, your father, Chris Spearman, being a former mayor of Lethbridge. How does that play into your political dynamic and your motivation for running as mayor after serving a term as an Airdrie city councillor?
Yeah, you know what? It's been really, really fortunate. My dad and I don't always have the same politics, and I think most people are pretty aware of that at this point. We don't have the same politics necessarily, but what I do really appreciate is that at a very young age, one of my earliest memories was barely being able to reach the windshield wipers of a vehicle, but putting his pamphlets under there while he was running for a school division. So I have had the pleasure of understanding at the dinner table what's going on in my world and how my voice affects it. So certainly from a young age, politics has always been something that I have never missed an election, whether it was a school election or one that I was actually legal to vote in. But even from a campaigning standpoint, I have always supported my dad in his campaigns, and he has certainly always supported me in mine. And, you know, a fun fact that I really love is that in October of 2021 was the night he retired from his mayorship, and that was the night I was first elected to municipal politics. But not only that, now that I've been elected mayor, he was the mayor who took Lethbridge into 100,000 K for a population, and I will be the mayor that takes Airdrie through 100,000.
Indeed, yeah. Alrighty, I have to leave it there for time. Appreciate your time this evening, Mayor Spearman.
Michael.
Great to speak with you. Thank you.
Bye now.
Heather Spearman is the mayor of Airdrie.